The dust came first. It always did in a place like Mercy Crossing, long before the sound of hooves or voices, before trouble took shape. It rose slow and dry from the hard road, curling in the heat like something alive. Caleb Rourke watched it. From the shade of the auction pen, hat pulled low, one hand resting against the worn grip of his revolver. He wasn't there for cattle. Anyone with eyes could see that. Men gathered in loose half-circles, boots scraping dirt, muttering through tobacco-stained teeth. Women stood farther back, arms crossed, expressions guarded. No one said much, not out loud. A drunk laughed somewhere behind Caleb. "Hell of a day to sell flesh," the man slurred. No one corrected him. The girl stood on the platform with her hands tied loosely in front of her, barefoot, dressed too thin for decency, let alone dignity. Dust clung to her hem and calves. Her hair, dark and tangled, fell over one eye. She didn't look at anyone. The auctioneer, a narrow man with a voice like a rusted hinge, cleared his throat. Young female, no trouble, strong enough for housework. Deaf, as I'm told, won't be much for conversation, but she don't complain, a ripple of laughter. Quiet, but sharp. Caleb's jaw tightened. The girl's father stood nearby, swaying, shirt half open, bottle in hand. He didn't look at her either. "Start at 20, the auctioneer called. Silence. Then, 25, came a voice. Caleb didn't recognize it. Didn't need to. 30, another voice. Eager. The girl shifted slightly like a horse sensing a storm. Caleb stepped forward. 50. The number dropped heavy into the heat. Heads turned. The auctioneer blinked. $50. 60. Someone snapped quickly. Caleb didn't look. 80. The murmurs grew louder now. Curious. Suspicious. 100, came a voice from the back. A big man, broad shoulders, sheriff's badge glinting dull in the sun. Harlan Pike. Caleb's eyes lifted. That settled it. 150, Caleb said. The sheriff smiled without warmth. "You buying charity, Rourke? Or something else?" Caleb didn't answer. The auctioneer hesitated, glancing between them. 150? Any higher? The crowd went quiet. Pike spat into the dust, then shrugged. "She ain't worth that much." "Trouble." "Sold," the auctioneer said quickly. The hammer struck. The girl didn't flinch. Caleb cut the rope from her wrists behind the stables. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought. Not a child, but not far from it. 18, maybe. Her wrists were bruised. She rubbed them slowly, eyes flicking up at him once before dropping again. "You got a name?" he asked. No answer. Right. Deaf. He shifted, uneasy. Words had never been his strength anyway. "Caleb," he said, touching his chest, then gestured toward her. She watched him carefully. Then, after a moment, she pressed a hand lightly to her own chest. "Eliza." Her voice was soft, not broken, just unused. Caleb nodded once. He led his horse forward and helped her up. She hesitated at the contact, stiff, wary, but didn't pull away. They rode out of Mercy Crossing without looking back. The ranch sat alone against a stretch of dry land where the grass grew stubborn and thin. Wind moved through it with a low whisper, like something remembering. Eliza stood near the fence that first evening, watching the horizon burn itself out. Caleb kept his distance. He'd given her a room. Clean sheets, water, food. She hadn't spoken much, only watched. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly, just unfinished. At supper, he sat across from her, hands wrapped around a tin cup. "You don't have to stay," he said, slow, careful. "Not like before." She looked at him, head tilted slightly. He tried again, gesturing awkwardly. "Free." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. Then she nodded once, but she didn't leave. Days passed. She learned the rhythms of the ranch quickly, feeding chickens, mending torn cloth, sweeping dust that returned no matter how often it was chased away. Caleb watched her sometimes from a distance. She moved quietly, not just because she couldn't hear, but because she'd learned not to be noticed. One afternoon, he found her standing near the corral, one hand pressed lightly against the wooden post. Her eyes were closed. He approached slowly. "Eliza." "No." Response, of course. He stepped closer, boots crunching softly. Still nothing. Then he saw it. Her fingers, pressed firm against the wood. Feeling the vibration. The horses shifted. Hooves thudded faintly. A rhythm. She wasn't listening. She was feeling. Her eyes opened. She looked at him, startled at first, then something softer. He raised a hand in apology. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out. Her fingers brushed his chest. Caleb froze. Her hand stayed there, light but certain. His heartbeat, steady beneath her palm. Her eyes widened. Not fear, recognition. That night, the wind carried trouble. 3. Riders came just past sundown. Caleb saw them before they reached the gate. He knew one of them, Sheriff Pike. Caleb stepped out onto the porch, rifle resting easy in his hands. Pike dismounted slow, boots heavy on the ground. His men hung back. That girl, Pike said, not bothering with greetings. She's wanted. Caleb didn't blink. For what? Doesn't matter. Pike smiled thin. Town business? Eliza stood in the doorway behind Caleb. Silent. Caleb didn't move aside. She's not yours anymore. Pike went on. You paid for her, sure, but papers got complications. Caleb's grip tightened on the rifle. Then bring papers. Pike's smile faded. You don't want trouble, Rourke. No, Caleb said, but I won't hand her back to it. The silence stretched. Wind moved through the grass. Eliza stepped forward then, just enough to be seen. Her hand found Caleb's sleeve. He felt it, small, steady. Pike's eyes flicked to her. Something cold settled there. She ain't worth dying over. Caleb didn't answer. The first shot came fast. Gunfire cracked the quiet open. Caleb moved without thinking, pulling Eliza down, returning fire with sharp precision. One of Pike's men dropped. The other scrambled back. Pike cursed, firing again. Wood splintered. Dust jumped. Then, silence. Pike's horse screamed, rearing. He pulled back, cursing under his breath. This ain't over, he spat, backing away. You just bought yourself a war. Caleb didn't lower the rifle until they were gone. That night, Eliza sat close to him by the fire, closer than before. Her hand found his again, pressed against his chest. His heart was faster now. She felt it. Her fingers traced the rhythm, slow, deliberate. Then she leaned forward, just slightly, resting her head against him. Caleb didn't move, didn't breathe. He wasn't a man built for softness, but something in him shifted. Careful, fragile, alive. The next morning he saddled 2 horses. Eliza watched him, question in her eyes. We leave, he said. They'll come back. She nodded. No hesitation. They rode out together into the wide, empty land, not as owner and possession, not as savior and saved, just 2 people carrying things they couldn't say. Weeks later, they reached a valley where the land softened and the wind didn't bite as hard. They built something there, slowly, not much. A cabin, a fence, a life that didn't ask too many questions. Sometimes at night, Eliza would sit beside him in the quiet, her hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would smile. Not because the world had been kind, but because, against all reason, something in it had chosen not to be cruel, and that was enough.